is linguicism? It's prejudice based on the way someone talks. Think of how much you talk in a day. Have you ever felt insecure about the way you spoke? Was it your accent, slang, or tone? Were you ever judged by a teacher or classmate by the way you spoke or wrote in school? Imagine going into a job interview with a high education. You meet the requirements of the position and your resume is on point. The only problem is, the interviewer doesn't like the way you speak. In our first scenario, we have two actors who are hosting a fake interview. Sam, our interviewer, is waiting for her last client for a new position. Hiwa, our victim, is prepared to impress Sam with his qualifications. See if you can spot the linguicism.
Are you Kamal?
Yeah.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay.
شركة النور المقاولات العامة.
What? I'm sorry. Are you speaking English?
Yeah. So this is the name of the company. It's like it's in Arabic.
Oh, I thought you weren't. Okay, so just to be on the same page, if you could speak English, because this company deals with a lot of people and they only speak English. Okay. So tell me about how you've handled some confrontations in the past.
Sorry, what you said?
I said, tell me how you've handled some confrontations in the past. You know what confrontation means?
My job.
Okay, I'm just gonna remind you to speak up because your English is pretty bad. And so I do want to point that out really quick. I'm not trying to be rude, but I understand that you don't speak English, proper English well. Why would you apply to a job if you can't speak the language that we're speaking? Okay, I only caught half of what you just said because you weren't speaking English again. Tell me that you heard that.
I wasn't even paying attention, sorry.
I literally had to repeat myself. Like,
At least you can win.
I'm not hiring him, and if I were, you already know he wouldn't get the job. You know the people that we deal with
Oh yeah.
on the phone? No way. Okay?
So you call me?
I'm not calling you.
Okay.
My boss is gonna call you, so you expect a phone call from him. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, but I do appreciate you. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you. That was a waste of 20 minutes.
Grocery store, it can happen really anywhere, on the bus, you want ordering food, because if someone doesn't understand you, sometimes they're ignorant to the point where they don't know how to go about it, like, calm down, actually try to understand what is being said, instead of just going off like, I don't understand what you're saying, how did you come here if you don't speak good English, and all this other stuff. So I've seen it happen multiple times.
Linguicism can be anywhere. Even though we may be constantly exposed to it, it is not always easy to detect. How would you react? Would you ignore it, or would you intervene?
I mean, it wasn't necessarily that I wasn't willing to defend it. It was just, I don't know. I guess, yeah, because I've had it happen to me before, so yeah, I would.
How has it happened to you before? Like,
Because I've been in a lot of foreign countries that are not like English basic speaking or whatever, so I've had that happen. Or sometimes the way I speak, it doesn't come across clearly because I have like a twang sometimes, so people will be like, what did you say? And yeah, so.
Well, I'm pretty sure now, because I really didn't hear anything, but if I do hear it, then yeah, I would like kind of feel a certain way, because like, whoa, hold on, that's not right. So if I do hear it, then yes, I will act upon it, but I didn't really hear anything over there, literally, so, but yeah, it's not right, so.
I didn't think this was being particularly rude.
okay.
But I suppose she could have been a little bit more polite.
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually thought she was being very rude too.
Okay.
It was weird for me because I was like, well, it is a job interview, but she seemed like she was being excessively like rude and questioning his language skills. Like I could kind of understand him, so I was like, I think it might be more on her level. So I kind of felt bad for him.
I wasn't really listening,
Yeah.
so. It's frustrating to encounter people who are going to assume anything about me based on what I look like or what way I walk or dress or any particular characteristic. Just, I don't know them, they don't know me. They don't know a thing about me. I don't think language proficiency, especially in a foreign language, I don't think it's just the way you speak.
I thought that there was definitely kind of a level of that, because I think that it was clear to me that at least like within that scenario that she was already decided not to hire him just based on that language barrier. So.
Have you ever had trouble understanding someone or being understood? If so, this is called the communicative burden. Oftentimes, the speaker is expected to put forth more effort for the listener to understand them. In reality, the burden should be equally shared.
I really don't remember what time it is.
I mean, like, it's been like 20 minutes now.
I mean, it's rush hour. Well, a little past rush hour.
Wait. I think. Hi. Come on.
Come on. Yes.
Nice to meet you.
But it was kind of hard to talk. I think he can hear you right now.
No, it's like I had to repeat myself actually multiple.
I think he can hear you right now. That's really rude.
Well, we're doing an interview, and it's probably like he's the last person.
He's right there.
He can't even understand me though. Like I'm
I'm
talking.
pretty sure he can.
Anyway,
How many
Kelsey.
languages do you know?
Anyway, Kelsey.
English?
I don't know. I don't.
I think it's really impressive when somebody can speak multiple languages. I think you should give him credit.
I would if I could understand him. Are you going to be a translator?
I understand him fine.
Okay. I mean, that's great. That's really great.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Year, like, so what I have to.
No, this is paychecks. So.
This country doesn't have an official language. So for people to argue that you have to be able to speak English, I mean, it's really just a commonality. It's not an official language. But it really irritates me when people can speak multiple languages and they're not recognized for being able to speak English or clearly. I think the prejudice happens all the time, whether or not people are that vocal about it. I don't know that they would be that vocal about it.
Michelle emphasizes there is no official language in the United States. It is only a normality to speak English. The standard language myth is the perception that only one type of English can be spoken intelligently, while other languages are dismissed as informal or incorrect. Have you ever judged someone based on the way they spoke?
I mean, I think if I was like the woman who did say something right as I was ordering coffee, if I'd been sitting there the whole time, I would have really wanted to, and if I didn't, it would have been just out of sort of social kindness.
Okay.
For non-native English speakers, constant insecurity about language skills is a common fear, as one may be afraid that the listener cannot comprehend what they are saying. Don't forget, this is what we call the communicative burden, where the responsibility of listening and speaking during a conversation needs to be equally shared between parties.
I still do every day. You know, it's something that just never goes away. Well, I have an accent. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. So you're always cautious. English is your second or third language. You listen to that question, you form it in your mind, then you translate it, then you start answering it. It's like a series of steps. And then now you're ready to answer it. And by the time you're ready to answer it, people have moved on. And so, you know, and so you're always like playing catch, you know, oh, they've moved on, okay. I feel like every day there's, you know, I'll go to a restaurant and I'll talk to a waiter, and the next thing would be, oh, where are you from, you know? So those are not bad things, but it's really a marker, like You just can't get rid of it. But I know some younger immigrant kids who, because that process has been very traumatic for them, so they really work hard to get rid of their accent and to speak like Americans. And in the end, it's a little bit sad to see because, you know, you can see that they're trying so hard, but you can see that it will never be, you know. So, but they do that because they want to belong, they want to make friends, they want to be accepted. And they've had very traumatic situations where, you know, they've been mocked or just treated differently because they have an accent. You know, people generally are accepted. There are a few people here and there who are, you know, but for the most part, people are accepting. But I think it just takes one instance to traumatize you and just to change your worldview. Saying this is proper English, it means that there's one that is not. Well, I don't view it as not being proper. I just view it as being another dialect of English.
She references microaggressions, which are a form of backhanded compliments, when the speaker means to compliment someone, but there is an underlying insult beneath it. One must always be conscious of what they're to say and whether it can offend the person they mean to compliment.
I think, you know, we know that they said, I don't know what the current status is, but they say a few years ago it was 1 in 9 students are going to be of, you know, non-native speakers of English. They say 20 years from now it's going to be 1 in 4. And so that's the reality of what, you know, prospective teachers are facing. That's the reality. And so I think going into the market, knowing that, you know, this is the reality and preparing yourself in that regard, I think can be beneficial. So diversity is here, it's here to stay. So it's us teachers who have to shape ourselves to meet those needs. And you can only do that by being more conversant with other cultures, being appreciative and valuing them. But also, you know, there's just something about, you know, we know for a fact that people learn better in more diverse settings. You know, so if you build a community where people respect diversity and value diversity and tolerate multiple points of view, you know that your students are going to come out better and stronger, and it's going to build stronger community within your classroom, and they can take what they've learned even outside of the classroom, because we know schools are just a microcosm of the society, and so those skills that they're learning in school, they can transfer those to their day-to-day life. So definitely there are benefits, not just for the non-native speakers, but even for the white students or the native speakers. There's benefit to having that sense of community by being accepting and valuing diversity. So definitely everybody wins.
The danger that comes with the need to adapt better language skills is centered around the threat of assimilating into a new culture while dismissing your own. For pre-service teachers, think about your future classrooms, where your class will be a mixture of cultures, backgrounds, and communities. Would you encourage them to assimilate or accommodate?
I'm not necessarily a language person, so I'm not very conversant with theories of language. But I would say one of the things that I really emphasize in my interns or any pre-service teacher is to think about the students' background, where they're coming from, their home life, their culture, the languages they speak. What is it they call now? The fans of knowledge, because everybody, you can't. Everybody, whether they speak English or not, they have some kind of knowledge and strength that a teacher can use to tap into in order to reach that student better. So my emphasis has been just, be conversant with your kids' cultural backgrounds and, plan your curriculum around their real life experiences or their lived experiences. Educate yourself about other cultures. You don't have to know all languages because you're not Superman.
Code switching is a tool used to adapt to one's surroundings in terms of language practice. It is based primarily on environments when one determines which setting is formal or informal. When taught in schools, children who speak AAL are often taught to code switch to LWC in order to better themselves.
Not for a really long time. I think I grew up in a primarily white environment, so I learned to adapt my speech to fit my surroundings.
Okay.
But definitely, there are certain words that I've only read and have never spoken, and mispronouncing those in classroom settings has always been kind of oh no, can they tell that I'm not educated in this formal manner? Formally, you would just call it racism, as it is, but I'm trying to think. Racism, discrimination, is there a term for it that I...
Yeah, there actually is. It's called
Okay.
linguicism, and so it's prejudice based on language skills or if it's a different kind of English.
She brought up a great point that linguicism and racism are linked. Do you agree?
I definitely don't, especially when you come to writing and reading classes. That's when it gets really tricky. I remember being in 7th grade and having a professor or teacher back then who told me the way I used certain words was improper and I'd have to learn how to switch that back to something more standard English if I was going to get a good grade on the project, but now kind of being able to reclaim that language as something that's from my heritage and taking that back rather than doing white English. I feel like it definitely makes class spaces, and especially academic spaces, really unsafe for people who aren't native English speakers especially, but also those who don't speak white English.
Okay, so you call it white English.
Yeah, I call it white English. I hate the idea of a standard English being white speak. Definitely from a lot of family members, my grandparents and cousins are all from more rural areas. So when I would kind of speak around them, it's kind of you need to learn how to code switch back if you're gonna be a part of this family discussion.
How can code switching be damaging to one's identity? By labeling their home language as informal, individuals wonder if this is a judgment on their cultures as well, which can lead to selective disassociation or detachment from their community.
Yeah, and it's a language that is harder to learn if we're born into it. I feel like a lot of more formal languages have oh, take this class or take this lesson, you can do it, but kind of Black Talk especially, it's you have to be able to ease into it, and it's hard to do that if you weren't born around people who spoke up. I think it would definitely be really hard, and it would have to start with the way teachers are educated and the diversity they're exposed to in their classes as students.
I think that this provides a really important opportunity to have some pretty candid discussions about the relationship between language and power, and the ways in which standardized testing is a moment where we have to play the game, and to know that it is a game, and that it is a game that is, that is racist and classist, and it has been set up in a way to help some people succeed and other people not. I think having a candid discussion about that is really important. And so that hopefully will sort of reify the message from my classroom that your language is beautiful and powerful and meaningful, but look at this world that we live in that is sort of structured by certain kinds of power dynamics, and some of the hoops that we have to go through in life require us to play these sort of language games and to help them gain the sort of keys to power almost. And I'm not sure that's quite the way to put it, but to help them know the game that they're playing and know how to play it successfully, hopefully.
She mentions that tools like code switching are used in order to play the game, which plays along with the myth that standard English is the language of success. Would it be realistic to reinvent the game or dismiss it entirely?
So I see two main drawbacks, and they're for sort of different kinds of students. So students whose sort of, I don't want to say native language, but students who grow up not speaking, as you guys say, the language of wider communication, not incorporating multiple languages, multiple ways of speaking, knowing, expressing oneself. That sends a message about what languages count. And what languages matter in this world, which implicitly sends a message about sort of what cultures matter, what kinds of knowing matters, and it creates a sort of hierarchy of value in your classroom, which can be really hurtful and can really alter the life experiences and schooling experiences of people who don't speak the language of wider communication. I think for folks who do speak the language of wider communication, it sends a message that their language matters and that their language is valuable, which then can just perpetuate this, the way that language is stratified. And if people who speak the language of wider communication go out and only take seriously those people who also speak like them, instead of recognizing that as tied to culture and tied to community, and they see it as a judgment of value, like you're more valuable or you're more educated or less valuable or less educated, then we just perpetuate this cycle of oppressing people based on their linguistic, practices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The power that linguicism holds is much stronger than we have been led to believe. As soon as we rank languages on a scale, it will lead to a cultural hierarchy. Do you see that reflected in our system today?
So I will say that in my classroom, I had a lot of conversations with students about the fact that there's no such thing as correct or proper English, because students want to use that a lot. And I taught primarily sort of white, lower middle class to sort of working class students who definitely have different kind of language practices than the language of wider communication. And so there would be times when we'd be peer reviewing something, or a student would say something like ain't in class, and somebody else would be like, that's not proper English. And then depending on the moment and like whether or not I had time, I'd be like, time out here, let's talk about proper English and the fact that it doesn't really exist. And I would often bring up the idea of African American English in order to talk about this, which is something I was able to do. So I know that African American English is a rule-governed grammatical language system. And so I was able to talk about that with my students and say, this is a kind of language that the media and that sort of popular culture calls like less than a language, or sloppy English, or lazy English. And so I was talking about how linguists, and so I always base this in sort of science. I'm like, linguists, people who study language, affirm that this in fact is a language. And therefore, it's a language because it's rule governed, etc. Therefore, we can't go on saying that there's something called proper English that is different from something like African American English. And so then we get to have conversations about, well, what makes up a language? What does it mean to have something that is actually a language? Which gets into conversations about community and literacy and how we make meaning together. And so, these would happen in like bits and pieces in my classroom, and I don't know how many students walked out of my classroom officially feeling like, yep, there's no such thing as proper English. But I hope that in those moments I at least disturbed that notion and sort of pushed back against that, because again, I don't want my students, again, primarily white students, going out into the world and one day being managers or bosses somewhere and denying someone the possibility of working at their company because they don't speak the language of wider communication. So I am going to rely on the words of Christopher Myers, who is a African-American children's book author, children's and young adult book author. And he wrote a wonderful op-ed a couple years ago in the New York Times where he says, look, usually we talk about literature as being either a window that somebody can use to see into a world that's not their own, a mirror through which someone sees themselves. Those two metaphors are really common when we think about literature. He says, I want to offer a third. I want to offer the idea of landscape. And he says that a big, huge problem in children's literature is the dearth of characters of color, and especially of African Americans. And he says that even when we do have those pieces of literature, it's pretty common to see a pretty stereotyped vision of what it means to be an African American, especially an African American boy or young man. And he says that sends a message about the landscape out there, like what is possible to know and be and do in this world if you are African American or specifically an African American young man. So I really like that metaphor because I think it applies to this. I think that if we only have literature that is written in the language of wider communication, that sends a message about the landscape of how it's possible to talk in this world, and how it's possible to communicate with others and make meaning through language. When students only see that, right, it sends a message to those who don't speak the language of wider communication, again, that their languages aren't valuable. And that's not really part of the landscape of what it means to talk and communicate in this world. When we do include it, it makes that a possibility, and it makes it possible to imagine talking in many different kinds of ways and expressing oneself in many different kinds of ways. And so I think that sends a message about value. I think it sends a message about the fact that the way that you speak is beautiful, is powerful, is meaningful, all of those things. And then for those folks, like again, who speak the language of wider communication, seeing more of a landscape of how it's possible to talk and to communicate with others also hopefully starts to break down notions of what counts as beautiful language or what counts as how to make meaning with language. And I'll just point to like my personal experience in high school reading Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, which is written entirely in dialect. And I remember really getting frustrated with it at first because it was hard for me to read. And halfway through it, I was like, this is beautiful. Like the way that Zora Neale Hurston is able to use language and capture dialect in ways that get at sort of a rhythm and a syntax that was breathtaking was like pretty awesome for me as someone who grew up speaking and grew up with people speaking the language of wider communication. And so that opened my eyes to the landscape of what's possible. And I think that's possible for both students who don't speak language of wider communication and those who do speak it.
Our campaign, Share the Burden, hopes to remind viewers that your voice is valid no matter what. Don't forget to share the burden and end linguicism with one word at a time. Spoke. Oh. Line. Was it your accent, slang, or tone? Were you ever?
Oh my gosh. Can we start over? Can we start over? Why? I wasn't ready.
What am I going? Should I go?
No, you're fine.
Oh, no.
Wow.
I literally just jinxed us. I was like, yes!
I hate. In our first scenario, we have two actors who are hosting a fake interview. Sam. In our first scenario, we have.
Fucking.
In our first scenario, why are you smiling at me? Press Sam with his qualification. What is happening? God damn it, it's qualifications. Jesus Christ. Okay.
We can just keep rolling.
Definitely think of it as an umbrella term. That was a bird. That person was actually a bird.
Michelle emphasizes that there is no official language in the United States. It is only a normality to speak English. The standard language myth is the perception that only one type of English can be spoken intelligently, while other languages are dismissed as informal or incorrect. Have you ever judged someone based on the way they spoke? Michelle emphasizes that there... See? Have you ever had trouble understanding someone or being understood? If so, this is called the communicative burden. Often...
Just pick up where you left off.
Okay. All right. Often...